Therapy. My guest today is, again, Andi Cobb, friend of the show.
Hello.
This is going to be an interesting episode because it's something that I kind of just decided to start doing with each guest on the show because it's so integral to what we're talking about even here. And it is about our origin stories. So, like, things that we think about or don't think about when it comes to money and how what happened in our childhood and how we grew up with money shapes some of those things. And so I've got a few questions for you.
All right.
You have been given the questions ahead of time.
I was.
To prepare. Good. And so we'll just dive right in, and I'm happy to kind of share along with you, but I think it's so interesting to hear about what other people kind of grew up with. So
Yeah.
let's dive in. The first question for you in our Origin Stories episode is, what is your money origin story? So how did your family deal with money? What do you feel like you learned about money growing up or before you actually entered your adulthood?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a two-parent household.
Mm-hmm.
My father owned a business, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. So, you know, my dad was the sole breadwinner, and they pretty much would get me what I wanted.
Yeah.
as a kid, you know, they provided for me, and I didn't really have to worry about it much, and so it wasn't really a discussion.
Yeah.
So that made things a little more difficult when I got to be an adult, you know. I did start working when I was 16.
Okay, I was going to ask,
So, yes.
working and allowance. Tell me about those.
Yeah, I didn't really have an allowance.
Mhm.
You know, I was expected to do chores and things like that around the house, but they would get me, like, if I wanted some new clothes or something, nothing excessive.
Yeah.
But I would just ask, and they would provide that, given that I had done chores and you know, I was a responsible part of the household.
Right. Okay.
So, but as far as like sitting down for a budget or like really understanding that,
It sounds like it was more of a an understanding that you had between you and your parents, what you were
Yes.
supposed to do, how you were supposed to behave, and then based on that, you had a full expectation that your needs would be taken care of, your desires even would be taken care of by your parents. So did they ever talk to you at all about what things cost?
not really. I mean, you know, well, my parents, they were frugal in a lot of ways. You know, my mom started an organization for needy people or people that were in need of clothing and food and things like that. So I grew up, you know, we would donate, and also I would help around that organization, passing out clothing and food.
So
and
there
stuff.
was a lot of, it sounds like, teaching around giving back, making
Yes.
sure that, you know, being grateful to an extent for what you had, and
Absolutely.
therefore giving back to people who are maybe more in need.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned working.
Yes.
What did that look like for you?
Well, I did a lot of different things. You know, I did some retail. I also worked with kids a lot. So I had
The
my
babysitting
own
days.
Yeah, babysitting, but also YMCA. You know, camp counselor, things like that. So, you know, I that was a part of me getting started in being responsible and having that paycheck, but. It wasn't a large amount, of course. As a kid, you're not going to get paid a large amount, but I would use that on clothes or shoes. Or,
So you got to
know,
keep everything you earned.
I did.
There wasn't like okay, good.
Yeah, I got to keep everything I earned, but I didn't learn a lot about saving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfortunate, you know, because I feel like that's been kind of my downfall in many ways.
Sure.
Not saving. And I didn't learn about investments or things like that, you know.
Well, I'm curious to know what you would say your parents spent the most money on or invested their money in growing up, or did you see anything like that?
I didn't really see a whole lot.
Yeah.
On that, I knew, they paid their bills. I would see them, work on their bills and things like that. But that really, unfortunately, wasn't a big discussion for us. So I knew things were handled. I knew that they had a certain amount that they had to pay for the electricity, for the mortgage, things like that.
Yeah.
Food. But it wasn't, I didn't have a process that I really learned
or that
early
they
on, or that they
modeled you for you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And who knows, because it could be that they had these things going on, they had these budget conversations, but they might not have thought, man, this is something that you guys really need to see, and so I'm going to walk you through whatever it is that we're doing.
Exactly.
I have told you before, notoriously, my dad made me make budgets for myself.
Yes, which is amazing.
I think it's kind of hilarious because it definitely got me to the point where I would be questioning what was going on with every $20 that I had. So it got to the point where it was very granular. But the thing that I think was most important that he taught me based on these budgets was that it is flexible. It's not like, okay, you set a budget and you forget it.
Yeah.
There are inevitably going to be times where you circle back to whatever it is and maybe ask your parents for more money, or say, oh my gosh, there's a field trip or something like that I didn't think about, but I need these dollars, and they're outside the budget.
Yeah.
But I think him kind of forcing me to think about what I was asking for and why, and it helped me with a little bit of accountability, and it also helped me with just some realism. If you start your budget and you realize that everything that you want on your wish list totals $1,000 in clothes for the school year, maybe you might have to rethink that, or at least say, well, listen, I will work really hard and I'll pay you back, or I will, work really hard and I'll get that pair of shoes or something like that later on in the year. It just forces you to kind of make some decisions about your priorities.
Yeah.
Even
so
if you
important.
Don't stick, even
As
if you don't
kid.
stick incredibly to it, it is so important because, of course, we want everything.
Starting those fundamentals early on, if I had that, like, to sit down and really discuss it, I think that would have helped a lot in the long run. You know? So, at least that's the approach I can take with my kids. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that leads perfectly into the next question, which is, what is kind of your money moment in life, the thing that really focused you or didn't focus you on money and maybe caused some bad outcomes, or was a great outcome for you, something that you want to either warn your kids against or tell them to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah.
Curious.
Well, so one thing I would say, right when I got to college, walking through the union and offering credit cards.
Yeah, cliche.
It's awful.
Here you go. Yeah.
That to me is just wrong. Because what kid is going to say, oh, no, I don't want extra, money.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not realizing
it's actually
all the
not
interest.
money.
And, I mean, you have to pay that back.
Sure.
So it's not a free ride.
No.
So I would say that starting out getting credit cards, I wish that I had really not done that.
Yeah.
And that there had been this big warning, or at least that big discussion about, hey, you're going to have a lot of interest that comes along with this, and it's going to be harder to pay off, and it will accumulate. And
since we've been in college, they have on credit card statements now, like, if you take 10 years to pay off this debt, it will cost you blank dollars. I think that is genius because, and I want to say, like, at some point they passed laws that would basically force that sort of outlay of, okay, I am looking at an overview of my life for the next 10 years. Do I really want to be paying this bill? And do I want this $1,000 bill to turn into $10,000 because of interest over the next 10 years? So I think laying it out in those terms, if you take 3 years, if you take 5 years to pay this off, what are you actually going to be paying out, is really helpful for people to both pay it off sooner, but then maybe not spend those dollars in the first place because, they aren't free. Like you said, they always come due.
Yeah.
So, and 7 years is a long time to wait for something that you haven't paid to roll off your credit report.
Exactly.
So,
it's a very long time.
Yeah.
But I would also say savings are important, you know, to at least have some buffer. And I think being a young mom and having, student loans and having lots to pay for with not those dollars that you get with, a job that you've had or a career that's flourished
established,
yet. It's established. And so I think that just constantly that cycle of trying to catch up, if I had a better budget plan and savings for that little buffer, I think if I had learned that early on, that would have saved me a lot of heartache.
Yeah. Well, I have two things to add to that savings idea. And one is, everybody talks about carried interest. Like that really is a young person's best friend. If you put away just a little bit, and I'm talking $50 to $100 a month, which, yes, when you're, you got $5 in the bank account, that seems like a whole lot. But I promise you, even during the very first, adult job that you have, if you can start then with $50 a month, which hopefully is manageable even at that point, the interest that you earn on those savings is going to be huge just by virtue of it being there and building on itself over time.
Right.
So starting early is a person's best advantage, honestly.
Yeah.
But then the other thing about savings is to not sweat the big stuff, as far as you don't need to focus on having $5,000 saved up or $10,000 saved up, because then I guarantee you'll probably not start saving anything.
Yeah.
Because it really feels daunting. But if you can do even $25 or $50 consistently, that small amount does add up. And I promise, like you're saying, the emergency will come. And it definitely feels better having a little bit of those dollars on hand than when you don't. And so, feeling the slight little prick of pain of a $25 a month outlay, if you go for a year or two without having a crisis, but you've put those dollars away, it becomes a much more manageable sort of situation than if you were trying to find $1,000 immediately.
Right. One of the things I was going to mention is that, all of this conversation that we've been having about finances and my origin story has inspired me to work with my son on a spreadsheet, a monthly spreadsheet of just listing his bills and, what's due the first part of the month, what's due the second part of the month, and just talking through that and where can I save? So we did that, and just to see the relief on his face when he kind of realized, okay, I do make a decent amount of money and I can pay my bills and then still have a little left over. And he was really able to see, oh man, I'm spending a lot on Uber Eats. Or I'm spending, a lot, going out to do
and
this activity.
And it's not significantly increasing your joy to do that.
Exactly.
Necessarily. You do that one less time, and that's your $50 that you could have probably saved, and then by the end of the year, by the end of 2 years, especially if you've invested that money into some sort of retirement plan, you're feeling like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even feel that. And that change, that shift has put me in a much more calm and kind of secure place with my finances, because I know that my little bit of savings is taken care of. Yeah. And I'm not hurting for that one time of Uber Eats extra in a month.
So he can still go and get Uber Eats, but not like
maybe
3 days a week.
Yeah,
Come on.
Exactly. And I think that also gives you a little bit of excitement about cutting one of those Uber Eats. If you have a budget and you can see, oh, okay, I can prioritize my savings plan and also prioritize fun. I just need to balance them. Yeah. So that, like you're saying, it's 2 times or 1 time a week and not like anytime I'm feeling like it. And it makes it much easier to make the decision to skip it one night if you understand what that budget looks like.
And where could that potentially go? For instance, we made his goals list of like, well, he wants to, go to Europe. So what does that look like? And then we started talking about, okay, what would flights cost? Yeah. And like what fund budget would you have to have for that? And, just all of these things that we started to discuss. Yeah. He's like, okay, so if I don't do this, like if I don't spend on Uber Eats and I put this money aside for my trip. Yeah. And, so he's starting to see the possibilities. All of a sudden, I'm going
to Europe. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so great. Budgets are boundaries and priorities. They really tell you what you prioritize in life. And so that is so exciting to hear. I know. It's nice to hear that, like, people might start being interested in making a budget.
Yeah, well, it was just funny to see the relief on his face because he was stressed. And I said, all right. Let's sit down and kind of have a look at all of your finances and put a plan in place so that you can tackle this.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited because
I'm kind of proud of myself, honestly.
You did it. That is a huge thing. And I guarantee you, years down the road, he's going to be like, oh my gosh, remember that time that we sat down and did this budget? Because it's such an impactful part of life to like, know what to do to take a deep breath with your finances, like to know what it might take to feel some relief and some security. That's huge.
Yeah,
that's
peace
huge.
Of mind above all. Like, that to me is fantastic.
That's what this is about.
Peace of mind, financial
can't
therapy.
Make you a millionaire, but we're trying to like make it a peaceful and harmonious experience to manage your finances.
Yeah, so I'm feeling good about this. This stuff is helping.
Yay! I love it. Okay, well that definitely leads into the last of our 3 origin stories questions. So on a scale of 1 to 10 being most positive, how positive is your outlook about your own finances?
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah, I really am. This has caused me to really start to think more about my future and how I can tackle things in my own way of just checking in consistently, being more consistent about looking at my finances and tweaking where I need to. Yeah. And I'm like I said, thinking about my future in terms of like what can I do with the money that I can save here and there. Yeah. Put away, and then that leaves me some time to enjoy life. Yeah. I want to enjoy I work hard. Yeah. So I want to be able to enjoy it as well.
For sure.
By checking my credit regularly, just making sure that my accounts, are there things I need to know about my accounts? Like, are there ways that I could potentially save? Can I work on my interest rate a little bit? Like, what can I do?
Oh, I love it. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so you feel like this process, just like being in this space of like thinking about how you think about finances or what you could be doing that maybe you're you've been avoiding, or even maybe not understanding, okay, I had the frequency with which you check in and make those kind of moves. Do you feel like that has improved then your outlook? Like, where did you start?
Yes, because I when we first started discussing this stuff, before I was just like, oh, I don't want to think about that stuff. It's just yuck. Yuck.
Yeah,
I was not one of those people that's like, oh, let me just get in there and think about all these numbers.
Yeah.
But talking through a lot of the emotional triggers and the things like we've discussed, it's really made me reconsider my approach to the way that I'm handling some things and being more open to like not being so scared of it, I think.
Yeah. I'm like super thrilled to hear you use the word excited.
Yeah,
like,
I am.
Which is so cool because that's how I feel about it. And it's doesn't mean that everything is hunky dory. I was telling you, like, we're going to have an episode on paper millionaires because right now, like with the markets doing the crazy things they're doing, and we're in Austin, so the housing market doing the crazy things it's doing. It's like, oh my gosh, I just lost, 6 figures of net worth, but it was only paper money, so I guess I'm okay. It feels like very scary, but at the same time, I'm super optimistic most of the time about finances, just because, I check in, I look, I take like note. And if I'm kind of doing what I need to be doing and not being scared of like, okay, what comes next? Because I already have a plan. And whatever is happening, it's like, okay, I might need to adjust some things here and there. But I know that things are going to work out okay because I'm not going to be forced to make any like catastrophic decisions because I've thought of what, and history is the best teacher. So like,
very true. If you embrace it, if you say, okay, I've made these decisions in the past,
let's
those
not
didn't
do that
serve
again.
me well.
Exactly. So it's good because I feel like you would continue to get more and more optimistic about your finances because you're learning some lessons along the way.
I am.
And you're doing such an awesome deed by teaching your kids like, hey, this is how you might think of some things, and giving them that sense of relief and being able to manage it maybe a little bit sooner than I
did.
It out.
Yeah, exactly. I because being young and as a kid, you're selfish. You want all the things. But you don't think about the consequences, and like money just doesn't grow on trees. Our parents were very accurate about that.
For sure. For sure.
So thinking about it ahead of time and giving them the tools that they need, that's critical.
Yeah. So. And helping them not be as fearful maybe to like confront some of these things. Because we all have to deal with them.
It's true.
Well, this was amazing. I love this.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming on to share your origin story.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Next time, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye.